dad didn't hit me, because if I say my dad didn't hit me in the face, then he gets to come home, Mom, right? And I was like, no, Jackson, Dad doesn't get to come home. You can't change your mind. What Dad did is not right.
I hope I didn't just shut off the. There we go. Good.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I think what I'm going to have everybody do now, since we have a fairly large group, is go ahead and in the chat, just type your name and the district or ESU that you are with. And that's how we'll take roll call. And if you can't find chat, there might be a more button you need to click on. All right, I'm just giving everybody a minute or two to. All right, while you're typing, I'm going to go ahead and introduce who's in the room. I'm Amy Muehling with the Department of Education. Hopefully most of you know who I am. I've been with the department for several years, and now I'm just here as a contractor helping districts get through the advisor program. So I'm kind of the advisor coordinator, and will be one of the people who's out doing work days. We've got Jeannie Carter, who is the Help Desk NDE Help Desk Manager. We've got Max. Max is everything advisor. He's a program guy.
One of the technical leads. Technical leads,
that's what we'll call him. And then we've got Jeannie, who does some administrative kind of support for this group. And a lot of times that's who you sometimes send an email to when we're doing meetings or have any questions or whatnot. Right, so welcome, first of all. This is probably going to be one of the shorter meetings because my goal here is really just to kind of talk about what these meetings will look like a little bit, and then kind of give you an introduction into the 17-18 parallel year. So this is the last year of NSSRS. We are hoping that all districts will at least connect to Advisor this year and be able to compare their data. And then starting next year, Advisor and EdFi will be the way that, that will be the required way that you will send your state and federal data requirements to us. So the agenda itself is posted on this Advisor website. So if you haven't made it out to that Advisor website yet, I would suggest that you do that in the near future. And under the word meetings is where I will post this agenda. It's just difficult to try and email an agenda to approximately 245 districts and knowing who to email that to. So if you are attending this meeting, again, those agendas and then follow-up minutes will be posted on that Google site under the meetings tab. What we'll eventually start doing, probably starting in the October timeframe, is I will kind of start giving you some statistics of where we are when it comes to districts, how many districts are publishing their data. So in other words, they've made the EdFi connection via their student information system, and then are syncing, and their data is showing up in what's called the Advisor Validation website or in our state ODS. And then if we do have some outstanding issues, this is the place where we'll talk about those. And we'll make note of districts with outstanding issues there and probably have some additional notes. If you do have a help desk ticket, the second link right here, this third link right here is how you can email what's called our JITBIT help desk. And so again, please keep those questions EdFi specific. Eventually, as we roll over from NSSRS to EdFi, that help desk will kind of roll over to this JITBIT system. But right now, we still have two separate help desks, two separate systems running when it comes to NSSRS and EdFi. So again, keep this particular link, and then right below that is the email. So you can get to us a couple different ways. and that's where you can ask those Ed5 questions. Okay, so the next thing I kind of want to talk about as we go into the 17-18 parallel year is what are our goals. And so the first goal is, if you were part of the EAP2 districts last year, we had several of you, that ideally you would be publishing your data by October 15th. And I still think we can meet this goal. We have had some issues with vendors having to go back and make some corrections in Ed5, and we'll talk about that shortly. But I think we're still on target to get the majority of people connected around that date. And then ideally, worst case scenario, we'd like to have all districts publishing by December 1st. Sometimes there's things that are happening. I know we still got some districts that might be in the middle of a rollover from one SIS to another SIS, but hopefully by December 1st, we've got all districts online. And if not, then we'll reach out to those who are not and work with them separately. Another goal of mine is to make sure that we have 2 or more Ed5 workdays at each ESU. Again, back to that website that I was talking about up here on that Google site, there is a calendar link, and I'll take us to that site here shortly. And that's where we're listing all those workdays. Hopefully you've heard from your ESU if you had workdays scheduled this week or next due to just some issues that have come up with some of the vendors. We've postponed those and are rescheduling those in October and November. So stay tuned if you're with one of those ESUs that had to do some rescheduling. But we want to try and do a majority of workdays here kind of in the fall, first semester, and then we'll probably attempt to do another round in the spring, just to make sure that data is starting to look how we expect it to look and any troubleshooting issues. And then starting in about the February or March timeframe, we want all districts and appropriate staff members by that time can successfully view the dashboard. We have gotten quite a few emails in the past couple of weeks about, hey, I can't, there's nothing in the dashboard right now, and we'll talk to that in a second. So there's some settings that need to be set up. We're still troubleshooting a few other issues, but probably coming into second semester, that January or March timeframe, anybody who needs access to the dashboard should be able to see this year's information by that time frame. Okay, this group here, our goal is just to make sure that you can see the dashboard. There are some VST members or virtual support team members who one or two from each ESU. We've got a couple who have stepped up to the plate and are going to become a little bit dashboard smart, and those will probably be kind of our go-to folks. When it comes to how to look at the data, how to analyze the data, that's when we're going to probably go back to more of your professional development team folks. So once they get all the necessary training on the dashboard, then they'll probably come back to the schools and do more training on the data itself. So again, the majority of people you're going to deal with right now are really more concerned about, can you see your data? Is it the right data? And are you getting connected to the dashboard? And then that's kind of where our support stops. If you have questions about why is this data this way, how can I use this data, what are some other resources I can use along with this data, that's when you want to reach out to your PDO, and they'll probably conduct some training as well. And just a reminder, the dashboard is optional. So if you as a district start getting into it and realize that it's not a tool that you find useful, no hurt feelings here. Then you can just kind of move on, and I guess I would just advise that you take a look at it every year or so just to make sure that that indeed is still the case, because that might change over time. And then by the end of the year, we just again want to make sure that all districts have done a data check, that they've reviewed the advisor validation site and any other tools that are available, and they've addressed any issues by June 1st, 2018. So whether those are issues that are contained within your student information system, incorrect data, incorrect settings, things of that nature. One of the things that is up and coming is, just like there's an NSSRS validation site, we've tried to duplicate that and make an advisor validation site that looks and feels very similar to NSSRS validation. It is currently live, but we're still tweaking quite a few of the reports. So that's probably something that we'll do some training on at our next meeting. And as you attend these work days, coming up. We'll do some training on that as well. If you've had NSSRS validation, access to NSSRS validation before, we tried to kind of do an overall, then we gave people access to advisor validation as well. And I'll take you to that in just a second. Okay, so that's my goals. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and I'm going to tell you about the EAP, which is now the advisor website. It is public. Let me move this little thing around here. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so it's public. Here's where I'm going to try to put some just general announcements. I'm a very less is more type of person, so I don't want to overwhelm you with information. Here's where you can see the calendar and those advisor meetings. You will notice that as this comes up, I've canceled the ones that are this week. Here's our meeting. Okay, and as we go through the months, you'll see what's there. So if you're unable to make your ESU, feel free to attend another ESU's workday. These are open to all districts. You just probably need to go to that ESU website and register because sometimes seats are limited depending on room space. Yes, Tina mentions, yes, we are still doing NSSRS workdays right now. We're kind of keeping two separate schedules. So NSSRS workdays have not been canceled. The only ones that have been canceled are the EdFi workdays at this point. And if there was a combined workday, which some ESUs we were doing half and half, or two of us were going to be there and districts kind of just move around, the NSSRS workday is still scheduled. So if you're not sure, reach out to your ESU. So today's agenda and meeting notes. So under the meetings tab, there's where today's agenda is. And then what I'll do is once we've completed the meeting, I'll do some quick meeting notes and you'll find that in this district meetings folder. We are also recording this, and so if it allows us, we'll probably post the link to that recording as well. So we're kind of, those are some technical things we're still trying to figure out on our end. If you just want some overall information, if you've been part of the EAP team, a lot of this is not new to you, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but there is some like advisor benefits, and that talks towards the dashboard. Move things around here. On the training tab, that's more specific to the dashboard. Under the instructions tab, however, we do list if a student information system does provide us with just some general instructions that we feel everybody should have access to, here's where we post that information. So, like for example, we've got some PowerSchool information. EdFi has shared, or Infinite Campus has shared some information with us, and as we continue to work with vendors, we'll be adding those folders. So again, that was under instructions. And I try to keep those updated, but if you find something that's outdated, by all means, please feel free to let me know. Okay, because sometimes what happens is the vendors put in a generic instructions. We'll take a look at them, work with our ESU members or VST members, and we'll make them more Nebraska specific. So we found that to be a little bit more helpful for some of our districts. Okay. Are there any questions about the new advisor or just the continuing advisor website? And I would just ask that you use the chat for questions so we don't step on each other. So I'll give a few seconds here if you do have any questions about the website, workdays, or any of our goals. Yes. That's a good idea. Tina, yes. Tina, I will put the link to the meeting, and then it should also be, Tina brings up a good point. On the calendar, I will put the Zoom link in two places. It's here on the calendar, within the calendar details, but I will also put it on the agenda in the future. So it'll either be here and then in the agenda that'll be posted. And I usually only post the agenda about a day or so before. Okay, any other questions or concerns? And again, just use your chat. I am watching the chat, so Okay, I kind of mentioned this already, JITBIT tickets. We've got 2 links up here for the JITBIT. So if you have a question in regards to EdFi or advisor, that's where we ask that you, that you go. Okay, so one of the questions, I've gotten a couple questions about you didn't get the agenda. I am not emailing the agenda simply because this is open to 245 districts and I'm never going to get this email to the right people. So the agendas will be posted on the public website. So look to the NDE bulletin for reminders of when this meeting occurs, and on this particular agenda at the bottom I do have a list of when all the meetings are. They occur monthly. If we need to have an ad hoc meeting or something where we need to get people together to disseminate information, we'll do that. But again, just because of email management, etc., I will simply just be posting the agenda on the public website, so you will be responsible to go out and get it. Okay, so when we did the EAP group and people had to register, then that was easier to manage, but because now this is open to all 245 districts, a little bit more difficult to manage. So again, the agendas will be on the website, and I usually post them about the day before. The dial-in information is going to be on the, you'll see that on the calendar, or I'll put that in the agenda as well. And I'll also have reminders in the NDE bulletin, usually about a week or 2 before the meeting, to remind you about the meeting. Okay, perfect. Okay, so JITBIT tickets, I've talked about that. Again, just make those specific to EdFi. If you still have NSSRS questions or things of that nature, you're still using that particular ticket system. And then rolling over into next year, things will kind of begin to merge and roll over. And as we know what that looks like, we'll keep you up to date. So the next thing I'm going to have Max talk to us about where vendors are. Except for one vendor, which is EduPoint out of Lincoln. At this time, we do not have any vendors publishing to 1718. They are still working in one way or another on getting their 1718 code ready. We had some attempts, but then they've had to go back to the drawing board or fix a few things. So with that said, I'm going to let Max speak, and I'm going to try to keep some notes here as Max is talking as well.
Yep. So out of the 7 vendors on the list here, 6 of them are fully certified and are just in the process of completing their code for the year, or they're in the process of trying to get their process together to start onboarding districts, because it is new for some of them. So going down the list, GoEduStar, their coding is done. They're completely ready to go. I just talked to them this morning, actually. So the next step for them is scheduling onboarding with the districts. So I don't have a date on that yet.
Do you anticipate they'll do this as a group, or they'll just do it individually?
They probably would do it individually. And I have not seen any documentation from them either, so I think they'll walk everyone through it, but no plan from them yet. Sycamore is certified, and they've got a plan to begin bringing districts online. They are starting with Morrill, so they are scheduling a date within the next couple of weeks to do that. And then after them, they'll, again, just work with each district one-on-one and bring others online. JMC is the one that still isn't certified, but we've had our first district certification meeting. JMC's working. I'm waiting to schedule another meeting with them and the the district. Forget who we were working with, but so within the next month, couple of weeks or something, they should be fully certified. And yeah, no big problems there. EduPoint, yeah, Lincoln, they are good to go. Oh, sorry. There's I forgot about SRS. That would actually give us 8 on the list, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
So SRS is also in the final phase of testing. We believe we're going to be good to go. Then SRS still, the ESUCC team needs to put together some documentation or some training for the updated SRS. And they'll have a system where districts will opt in, I believe, to, they'll flip a switch or something in SRS to say that they want SRS to send their data for them. I haven't seen how all that will work for the districts yet, so expect to hear from them within, again, a month, I'd say, hopefully. School, I think you already mentioned.
Yes.
They're certified, but they just had a few bugs to fix on their side.
Right. So if I have any PowerSchool folks on here, PowerSchool was certified and they put out a release, I think, at the end of August. And so there's a group of us that belong to, because I also work for Nebraska PowerSchool at ESU 5, so there was myself, ESU 10 folks, Ellie and Wayne, Sharon, and a couple of EST folks that are helping with get their districts on PowerSchool. So we started doing some testing and found some pretty large issues, and so we've been working with the programmers who've had to go back and redo some things. So at this time, they're just asking all PowerSchool districts to not move forward with EdFi. If you've done anything with EdFi, just stop. Their expected release date is September 29th with the fixes. And then if you have enabled the plugin and done some settings, you will probably have to start over, because they found some pretty large enough differences to kind of have to rewrite everything. So basically, we should do release out, an updated release on that September 29th, and we have work days that start, I think, October 3rd. So we feel pretty confident that they'll have things figured out by then.
And Infinite Campus is still working on getting the 17-18 update ready. They will then be scheduling the release and getting districts on board for the new year, again, through CIC support. So we are letting them handle that schedule. And I expect that process will start soon. And then Sims, I believe, is still working on the 17-18 update. But they will, once they get that ready, they actually will get all the districts online themselves in a will. So I'm sure she will notify all Sims districts when they are ready and connected. So we have a lot of people close. I know there's some districts that are sitting and waiting. They've asked for keys, and they're a Sycamore or JMC or a EduPoint district, and we will send those keys out as soon as we get the plan from the vendors that they are bringing you on board. So applications sit tight. We hope to get something moving this month.
Then Max, can you also talk to, so let me stop. Are there any questions, about vendors? And again, if you could use the chat, that makes life a little bit easier. So I'll give you a minute or so. Do you get a new secret and key each year? The answer is no.
If you just seen one.
Now, one of the issues that we had with Power School is that you would go and do a setup and then the next day it would strip the secret and key. So you would have to ask for it again, but it was the same secret and key that we sent you last year. So that may be something, if you do have it, if you do have that information and something does go wrong with your system, that might be something, we can always send it to you, but that also might be something you keep somewhere and know where it's at. Okay, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to have, we've gotten several questions. In fact, I might even just bring up a ticket here, so just give me a second. I'm not trying to shame anybody, if you will, but we've gotten this ticket several times, and I think if I read the ticket, that will just better explain the question. So we're really confused about advisor. Our school district doesn't seem to be showing any current or old data under the advisor tab. We suspect there are things that haven't been correctly done in setup. Where should we begin to make sure we're doing things correctly? Okay. Max, do you want to talk about what happens when we change years in advisor and the dashboard?
Specific to the dashboard, at the end of each year, we roll over the dashboard to the current year. It takes the data we had from 16, 17 in this case, and archives that. And then it only looks at the new year, the 17, 18 data, to get the current data, the day-to-day student stuff, as well as the access codes. Since you have to send up some staff data from your SIS because that controls who gets access to your dashboard. When we roll this over, and that happens the first week of August, no one will have access to your dashboard at that point. Not until you're able to get your SIS connected and start the data flowing again. And then we have to actually get the dashboard to build, which is usually an overnight process. So yeah, several people just wanted to start by going straight to the dashboard, but since almost no districts are able to send data currently, no one is able to get in.
Any questions about that? So in other words, what happens is we kind of do the shift in August, like Max said, and until you are publishing your current school year data, so that fall school year data, that's when we, do the recheck of who can have access and things of that nature. So once that stuff is up and running, then you'll start to see, and you'll only see this year's data, right? And advisors only meant to see a year at a time?
For most of the charts, the majority of the stuff you see is only the current year. There's, on a lot of the charts and graphs and things, there's a little historical data option that shows you past data. But most of the stuff, the the flags about the grades or the attendance or things like that, that's all referring to the current year. The little green and red flags you see when you first log in.
Okay, so any questions about the dashboard? And again, our goal right now is kind of, you know, once all the vendors get up and running, so October, November is really just making sure everybody's publishing. I was going to show you the advisor. Let me get there. So what districts should see when they click on the NSSRS tab is you should now, if you've had data steward access and NSSRS validation, you should see this link at the top. Again, what we tried to do is basically if a certain group of people had access in NSSRS validation, we have automatically given you access in Advisor. Now, I've run into a few people that for some reason that didn't roll over, and that might have been the type of access that they've had. In that case, you'll need to get the activation codes from your district admin or superintendent, or put in a JPIT ticket, and that's something we can help you do as well. But now most of you, if you've had NSSRS validation, you should also see Advisor validation. We are still working on some of those reports, so I'm not going to give a big tour here. But, you know, go in, again, here's your verification reports, here's your lookups. So a lot of that stuff, probably starting in December, January, we'll start to see errors. So we're still building this page. And right now, there's not much to look at because most people aren't publishing their data. So there's not much to see. So once you start publishing your data, however, that's when we'll start looking at the validation versus the Advisor validation versus NSSRS validation. And Ginny and myself, and that's something we'll just do throughout the year. We'll work with the VST members, and we're trying to kind of put together just some overall guidance on the best way to do that. So that's something that we're working on the next couple of weeks. Because ideally what should happen is what you have in NSSRS should, for the most part, match what you have in Advisor. And if it doesn't, then we need to find out why. Is something not right in your student information system? Did we not code the report right? Is it not pulling the data correctly? So we need to make sure those questions are getting answered and addressed. And that's what some of these work days will be focused around, especially as we get into like the end of October and November, because hopefully by then, most everybody's syncing their data. And then we'll regroup and we'll do the same thing in the spring.
Answer a few questions. Becky was asking about errors. The validation errors are not fully running yet.
So on the validation site, you won't see errors, but you may see errors within your student information site. Your student information, your SIS, sorry. Yeah.
And yeah, even when we get going,
okay, yeah.
you will still be adding new error codes. Right. And then about the historical data, like I said, there are places in the dashboard that have historical data that you can get, but I don't think that the dashboard really has all the data you need at the district. You know, it doesn't give you everything we have.
Right. I think it's meant to be an at a glance, an instant, how do I identify at risk? If you wanted to get an overall, like, hey, for the past 10 years, how has this group of, this cohort of students been doing? That's when either your ESU probably has something in place, there's the DRS website, things of that nature.
Yeah,
so,
especially going forward, our new site, the Nebraska Education Profile site.
Right.
That's really kind of, we're trying to make that be our main place for getting that kind of data.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
forward.
that. Okay.
That's also, of course, still being built, but if you go out to the NDE homepage, you know, the link to the NEP is right on there. That's, you know, what our replacement for the SOSR report.
advisor validation, will you be able to see, is that what you're asking, Jennifer? You will be able to see past data as of this year. And then we'll keep NSSRS validation available so that you can see anything that was in those databases from previous years. So that's part of the reason we're trying to make them look the same so that you can still get, I mean, am I correct?
Yeah, for now anyway, we're just kind of planning on keeping both of those running side by side. In the advisor validation side, yes, you can switch years.
Right.
There.
So just like NSSRS validation, now you can switch years. So that'll last up until this year. And then with advisor validation, you'll go back as far as, I mean, I don't know if we'll keep anything that got published last year. So you'll be able to go back as far at least this year for sure. No?
Not necessarily. I don't know. We haven't talked about that. But I mean,
Okay.
since the NSSRS data is still the data on record for this
Right.
year,
Oh, okay.
we might keep
use
it,
that.
or
Okay.
if we do keep it, we just have to make sure we say that this isn't.
Okay. So Max makes a good point. So what might happen is starting next year, that would be, since NSSRS is still the data of record and that's what we're using to pull, that would be what we have you look at. But then starting next year, when advisor or EdFi becomes the data of record, then yes, we would build upon that and you would be able to go back to previous years as we continue to move forward.
But we haven't really decided.
So some things still have to make some decisions. Well, that's probably a best practice, to be honest, because that's just going to confuse people.
But as of right now, 16, 17, and 17, 18 are available.
Right.
In the advisor validation site.
All right, and the last item I had to talk about was just, here's a list of our meetings. Right now, we're just doing monthly meetings. I'm just trying to be respectful of people's time. We're trying to do some individual kind of bi-weekly meetings or weekly meetings with some of the vendors to make sure they're staying on top of things. So we're kind of plugging those in the middle, and then we meet with the VST folks about once a month as well. Notice that there are no meetings in December. But if something comes up and we feel like we need to meet, again, I asked you to look at the bulletin. I'll usually use your VST members or ESU folks to reach out to districts, because that just seems to be the better way to communicate. So just look for those emails if something does come out. Look, there will probably be an advisor or EdFi portion of the bulletin as we continue to move forward. I know there's a lot of information in there, but just look for that kind of portion if you do want some updates. Probably the most thing that we ask from you is, as we continue to move forward, we just need your feedback. Something's not working, whether that's with your student information system, whether that's with the validation site, or even something outside of that that doesn't make sense, or in the dashboard. You need to let us know that, and the sooner the better. What we usually find out is one person thinks it's just them, and then we realize 10 other districts have the same question or problem. So don't be hesitant to be the first person to speak up.
Should be April 18th.
Did I put the 13th? Yep, you're right. That is April 18th. Sorry, thank you. Can't read my own handwriting. All right, well, we've got about 20 minutes left. And again, what I anticipate that we'll do at this October 18th meeting is we'll probably have some districts successfully publishing, and a lot of the focus is going to be on that advisor validation page and maybe on how to do some comparisons. So hopefully by then that's where we're at. That's the plan. So you can look forward to that. If there's districts that you thought should be with us and aren't with us today, we did have a pretty decent turnout. Please talk to districts and let them know about this meeting, because this is just a good place to get information. And this is also your time to give us some feedback. So at this point in time, the meeting's kind of open to you. Are there any comments? And again, chat seems to work best, just so that we're not stepping on people's voices. So I'll just be quiet for the next few minutes, and feel free to ask any questions.
Hey, Tanya, so you asked a question about Power School. At this point in time, just don't do anything. So we'll get further instruction when they do the release, and we have a meeting with them next week, so I'll know better. But right now, they really just said, if you've applied the plugin, just leave it alone, but don't mess with any settings. Don't try to publish your data. They're just asking people to stop, and then most likely, whatever they push down will probably reset everything, and then we'll go through that setup process again. So that's kind of the plan for now. What was funny was we went in thinking that we had this handful of issues, and then they found a bigger issue in one of their codes, in part of the program that they wrote. And so that's where their concern lies, in not wanting people to continue doing what they're doing. Yeah. So if your Power School, just hold off. And again, a lot of you probably get those tech note updates. If you don't, I communicate with the VST members who I'm asking to communicate with you, and have done a pretty good job of that. If you feel like you're not getting communication from your ESU or VST, you can send me a private message or an email and let me know that. Well, if there are no other questions, I will go ahead and close the meeting. I will be posting the minutes online, and then I will probably put something in the bulletin that just lets people know that here are the minutes and where they can find them, and then those also have the future dates as well. So I will stay on the line for probably another 5 minutes or so in case somebody does have some questions that didn't feel like they wanted to ask towards the group. Otherwise, you are all free to go, and we'll see you next month.
All